Hey everybody, this is Games Plus James, and welcome back to our old school first-person shooter tutorial series. So we've got our player moving around and able to look and see everything. If I press play here, probably be a good thing to be talking about what we're doing. So we can move, we can look up and down the way we want to. It's all perfectly good. So we're happy with that. The next thing we want to do is start giving ourselves something to actually shoot at. So we're going to shoot some stuff, but first thing I'm going to do is drag a little model into our scene to give us something to shoot at. So I'm going to go into our assets and into this cube model folder, and I'm going to drag and drop this cube into the scene, and we're just going to create an empty object that we'll call wall. I'm going to set this to be 0, 0, 0. We're going to move the cube to also be at 0, 0, 0, and I'm going to set this rotation to 0 as well. Let's just go to our 3D view to make sure we can see stuff. Trying to remember, did I give this cube a bottom? No, I didn't. Okay, that's all right. So we can't necessarily see it from our 2D view. So what we're going to need to do is I'm going to drag this and make this a child of the wall. Then we're going to set the Z value to be 0, so it's now above the ground. So if I switch back to our 2D view, we're going to move it over to the side here, like so. And then what I'm going to do is, in our art folder here, we've got some tiles, which I'm going to grab one of these wall tiles here, and I'm going to drop it into our scene, like so. And again, I'm going to make this a child of the wall, like that. This is just so we're able to see it in our view here. I dragged my cube over there, didn't I, rather than the holder object, so I'm going to do that. Switch our wall to be at 4, like so. So now we have a little representation here in the 2D view. But of course our wall itself just looks like a black box, so let's change that by going back to our assets folder. I'm going to create a new folder called materials. We're going to create a new material that we'll call wall 1. Now all these art assets are already set up for us to use in the game. They're imported at the correct values and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is go back to our materials, make sure we have this selected. We do actually have that. So I'm going to select this tile. I'm going to drag it into the albedo slot here, which is basically a way of showing our object in the scene. So I'm going to then click and drag this material. Let's go back to our materials folder. I'm going to click and drag this on top of our 4-sided cube, and what that does is adds the texture into the scene view. But it's really dark, we can't see it, but we don't want lighting working on our objects because this is a classic old school style thing. So instead of using the standard shader here, we're going to go into, click on this, we're going to go to unlit and texture, and then that immediately makes sure there's no lighting being applied to this wall, so it's just exactly what the sprite looks like. So now I can hit play, like so, and we can walk around this object and we can see, hey, we've got a wall. Okay, so now that we've got this wall, let's then start doing some stuff with it. So at the moment I can run through the wall. That's no good. We don't want our player running through the wall, or else our player will be able to escape and go all over the place wherever they want to. So I'm going to click on the wall holder object here, and I'm going to add a box collider 2D to it. And then on our player, I'm going to add a circle collider 2D. I'm going to make this much smaller than that because that's quite big. So I'm going to set the radius of our circle collider to be 0.25, like that. So now we've got this little circle around the player, and then what I'm going to do is the size of this box collider is perfectly fine. I'm not going to change that. So then I can hit play, and now we've got some physics attached to it, so we're bumping against the wall like so. But you can see what's happening is our player is actually bumping into our little wall here, and we're able to see through it, so that's not good. So let's try making our player a little bit bigger again. So maybe 0.25 was a bit too small. Let's go with 0.35. Let's try that. It'll probably turn out that 0.5 was actually what we wanted to stick with, but no, there we go. Okay, so we can now bump against the wall like so, and we're able to go like that. And now you can see what's happening here is our player is spinning around like crazy, and that's because now that we have some physics within our world, we need to apply some restraints to our rigid body, because at the moment the physics system is saying, hey, these two objects are rubbed up against each other, so it made it start having a rotation force applied to it. So we obviously don't want that happening, so I'm going to stop this, And then on our player, on our rigid body, we're going to go to constraints and freeze the rotation, because that was a little bit weird. We don't really want that happening. So now if I run up against this, I can rub against it all we want, and nothing weird is going to happen. Okay, so we've got that in place. So let's start making this so that we can shoot. Now to shoot, we could just use 2D physics, and we could say, hey, whenever an object collides with another object, we'll just put our sprite at this height. But it would be much more interesting to be able to, when we shoot a wall, for example, that we can, I can press the right button, that'd be handy, that we can make wherever the center of our screen is, make that be where the gunshot goes. So we're actually going to use 3D physics for handling our shooting, and this allows also to be able to shoot different body parts on enemies, for example, if we wanted to. So what we're going to do is now stop this, and we're going to add also to our wall, but we can't actually add it to the wall object here, because you can't have a 2D physics object and a 3D physics object on the same object, or sorry, component. Can't have 2D or 3D physics components on the same object. So what we'll do is go to the cube itself, and in here we're going to say add a box collider, but this time just a plain normal box collider. So if I switch to our 3D view here, you can see the box collider is now a 3D object. Now that won't have any effect on how we move around. So for example, if I was to disable this box collider, we'd be again able to walk straight through this, because 2D physics will only interact with 2D physics. But we're going to use 3D physics for our shooting. So let's go back to our player, to the wall, and turn the box collider. Oh, I only turned it off when we played, of course, so that doesn't matter. Okay, so we've got that stuff working now. So let's actually create how our shooting is going to work. So let's jump into our script here. And what we're going to do is down below our movement and rotation and looking stuff, we're going to add a new section. This will be our shooting area. And we're going to say if input.get mouse button 0. So that's basically if the player presses the left mouse button. So if we left click, which is our normal kind of click, then we're going to handle our shooting elements. So if the player clicks the button, what we're going to do is use something called a raycast. And basically all we're going to do is, if we switch back over here, from the very center of our screen, we're going to draw a line out from there, an invisible line the player can't see, but within the physics, basically, it'll draw a line from the center of the camera, and it'll just go in a straight point out for however long it takes. So it'll go out from here, and then if it interacts with anything, it's going to say, okay, I hit a point, so do something. Which in our case will be, hey, we'll make an effect appear to show, hey, this has been hit. Okay, so let's go back in. To do that, we're going to create a ray that we'll just call ray. We're going to set that to be equal to. Now, how we determine where this ray should go is using a thing called view cam. So that's our our transform up here. Now, what we actually want this to be is not just a reference to the transform, but actually a reference to the camera. So I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to change this from just being a transform to being a reference to a camera object in particular, which means that down here I need to add in dot transform, dot local rotation, and the same over here. Like so. Not too complicated. I didn't do this before simply because we wanted to keep things simple when we're understanding just the transform part, but now we're specifically wanting to do something with the camera. So we need to go viewcam dot viewport point to ray, and then we need to tell that what is the position we want to send this ray out from, and that's going to be a new vector tree. We want this to be in the exact center of the screen. So how this works is 0 on the X, 0 will be at the left edge of the screen over here, 1 would be at the right edge. So exactly in the middle we want to go 0.5. So 0.5f, and then obviously the same for up and down. So we'll want to go 0 will be the bottom, I believe, and 1 the top. It could be the other way around, but it doesn't matter because we're going to go right in the middle, so it'll be 0.5f. And then on the z-axis, so forward or backward, we want that to be exactly the middle of the player. Okay, so that's how we're going to draw our ray out. Then what we're going to do is create a raycast hit that we'll call hit. And this is basically what's going to detect. We're going to check if when we do this ray, if we apply that to our hit, then if there's an actual hit happening. And how we do that is we'll do an if statement here and say if physics dot raycast, and we want to use the ray is the raycast we're doing, and then that will send out information about what it hits to the hit object that we just created here. So basically what we're saying is if we do a raycast and information gets sent out into hit, so if this basically hits anything, if will be the point where this is true. So if something is hit, then we're going to go into this loop and we're going to say, hey, we won't print, we'll go debug.log. So it's just us being able to see a little message now. So we're going to say I'm looking at, and we're going to say this is just a way for us to be able to see something in the console for us to know that this is working. So I'm looking at, and then we're going to say the hit object dot transform dot name. Otherwise, if we're not able to see anything, then we'll say debug.log I'm looking at nothing. Okay, so let's test this out on a very simple level. We'll compile that, let it go back in here. So if I press play, so keep an S, and well, that doesn't help, but keep an eye down here and we'll see what we see. If I click over here, well, we haven't applied the view cam. Hold on, let's try this again. Player, view cam, there we go. Okay, so we can go over here. If I click this way, we see we get I'm looking at nothing, but if I put the wall in the center of the screen, I'm looking at four-sided cube. So four-sided cube is the object that has the box collider attached to it. Okay, so perfect. That's exactly what we wanted to do. It's doing what we want, but now we need a way to make this actually something we can see happening. So let's go ahead and make that work. So first thing I'm going to do is create an object that will allow us to have a little bullet impact effect. So I'm going to go into our effects folder in the art folder. We've got a bullet impact here. I'm going to grab the first one like so. I'm going to call this bullet impact. And this is going to be a very, very simple thing that we're doing here. So I'm going to then open my animation window, which I already have here, but if you don't have it, you can go to Window, Animation, Animation. And we're going to create a new animation for this. So make sure we have the bullet impact selected. And we're going to create, in our assets folder, I'm going to create a new one called animations. And we're going to call this bullet impact. And all this is going to be is our bits of animation. So I'm just going to make sure this bigger so we can see what's going on. So we've got the very first bit, then this little bit here, and then this little bit here, which should last for a little bit of time. And then at this point here, I'm going to make sure I have my record button turned on, and I'm going to deactivate the sprite render, and I'm just going to make this animation last for a while. So I'm just going to turn this on and off again. So now what happens is we play this little bit plays. If I could see what's going on over here, let me just turn off my recording so we can move this over here. So this plays, explodes, bang, and then disappears. So if I hit play, boom. Okay, so we don't want this repeating forever and ever, so we're going to make sure that before this ends, we destroy the object. So for that, I'm going to go to scripts. I'm going to create a very simple script called destroy over time. open this up. We're going to create a public float that we'll call lifetime. And then in the update, we'll say destroy game object, comma, lifetime. And that basically means destroy the game object after lifetime runs out. So it'll automatically count this down and then it'll destroy whatever object this script is attached to. So then on our bullet, I can add this script, give it a lifetime of 0.5 of a second. We have this animation running for 1 second. So then if I press play now, we should see the animation will play and then this object will disappear. So you can see it's already gone from our hierarchy. So we're going to make this a prefab object now so that we can repeatedly make it appear in our scene. So I'm going to go back to my assets folder, create a new folder called Prefabs. And we're going to click and drag the bullet impact into there. Let's delete now the bullet impact from the scene because we don't need it. And what we're then going to do is go to our player. Open up our player controller script and we're going to create a reference to that object. So up here, we're going to create a public game object bullet impact, like so. And then down here where we're looking at something that we want to hit, because obviously we don't want a bullet spawning if we're looking at nothing, so that'll be staring out into space, which is really something that shouldn't happen because we're going to add a ceiling and walls all around us, but we're just having it here just in case. I'm going to debug this out, or sorry, I'm going to comment it out because we don't need that appearing for us anymore. And then here I'm going to say instantiate our bullet impact. Where do we want it to go? Well, we want it to go to hit that point. So that's where our hit has occurred. And then we want to say the rotation for it will just be transform.rotation for now. Now, this is going to create a situation that is a bit weird for us, but we're going to deal with that in a moment or two. But for now, that's basically what we want to have happen. Okay, so I'm going to save that. We'll go back into Unity. And now if I go to my player, we have a slot for our bullet impact. So we'll go to Prefabs, drag and drop that into there. And if we hit play, now when I go over here and click, you can see our bullet impact is appearing. But what's going on here? It's looking very flat, isn't it? We're not really able to see what's going on. And that's because our little impact effect, you can see in the 2D view, looks absolutely perfect, but we need a way to make it turn around and face the camera. So we're going to take a look at doing that in another video, because this is going to be a little bit more of a complicated thing, and we're going to make sure our shooting looks better as well while we're doing that. But before we do that, we're also going to make sure that, hey, we can't just fire forever and ever. We don't want our player being able to just keep shooting and shooting and shooting. What we're going to do is make sure that we track how much ammo we have. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to create a value up the top. We're going to say public int current ammo, like so. And then down here, we're going to make sure when we click the button, we can only fire if our current ammo is greater than 0. Like so. And then what we're going to have is whenever we instantiate a bullet, or actually no matter what, whenever we click the fire button, we want to say our current ammo minus minus. So we're making sure that our ammo counts down every time we shoot. So let's see that in action. So we go back in here on our player. I'm going to make sure we have some ammo to start out with by default. So we're going to say 25, for example. Actually, let's just set it to 10 for now. So if I go back to our game view and I hit play, if we keep an eye on our current ammo over here, when I start shooting, shoot. Now we're out of ammo, so no longer, when I shoot, our bullets no longer appear. And that's exactly what we want to happen. If I just go back to my script, I want to check something. I just realized that we're using get mouse button rather than get mouse button down. So what's happening is, if I press play here, and if I hold the mouse button, it's basically doing a machine gun shot every single frame of the game a bullet is being fired out, so that's actually no good. So make sure that we want to use get mouse button down so that it only fires a bullet every time we click rather than every single moment that we're holding down the button. So let me just do this one more time. Okay, so we can now fire away and bang, we're out of bullets. Okay, so we're able to run out of bullets. We have that very simple system in place. The next thing we need to do is, as I said, we need to make sure that those bullet impacts look at the camera, and we also need to make sure that we have a visual system going on so that we're not just firing magic bullets out of nowhere. We want to get a gun on screen so we can see what's happening in our game. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon with more game tutorial goodness.